everyone, to our very last research presentation of the week. Thank you so much to all of you for taking the time out of your afternoon to be with us. We're really excited to show you what this group of interns has it off to VOSAP's founder, Mr. Desai, to talk more about VOSAP.
All right. Good afternoon, good evening, and early good morning from friends from India. So I welcome you as a founder of Voice of Special People to this amazing presentation research work that the team has done. I appreciate all of you to find time to join today, especially some of the distinguished guests from CRPD, UN CRPD, and others. So thank you very much for all of you. Over to Manushree, to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Desai. As you heard from him, we are very grateful to have somebody so passionate and focused on disability rights and change in this sector to be guiding us both this year, and had the privilege of him being our mentor last year as well, while we led our first iteration of the VOSAP research internship. So hi everyone, my name is Manushree Desai. Thank you all for coming out today. It means a lot to our team presenting. I am currently a rising senior at the University of Southern California, and myself and Anusha had the privilege of starting VOSAP Collegiate last year in 2020.
I too just want to thank everyone on behalf of VOSAP for joining us today. We really do appreciate your time on this Friday afternoon or evening. Like she said, my name is Anusha Singh. I too am a rising senior at the University of Southern California. Just to speak a little bit more about the program that we are running this summer, we have 5 research projects being conducted. Our teams are supported by 2 incredible editors, a communications intern, as well as a graphics design intern for social media outreach.
Thank you all for those introductions. And now I'm really happy to introduce you all to the team who is researching assistive technology. They're led by their project manager, Shreya, and made up of research interns Sachi, Leo, Katie, and Syed. And now I'm excited to hand it over to Shreya and her team to show you what they've done this summer.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rachel. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. We'll go ahead and start presenting. All right, so assistive technologies, or ATs, are essentially just devices that aid people with disabilities, and such technologies range from really simple inventions such as glasses to really high-tech technologies, for example, prosthetic limbs and exoskeletons. These ATs are incredibly critical for people with disabilities to live really productive and fulfilling lives, as this technology grants them independence to do things on their own. But unfortunately, access to affordable assistive technology is incredibly limited, as only 1 in 10 people have access to AT. And the WHO estimates that this number will only increase, since by 2030, more than 2 billion people will need at least one assistive technology. And this really leads us to the key research question. What are the current trends of AT research and development, and what policies can be implemented to promote equitable access to AT? So in terms of data collection, we split this data collection into really 2 major steps: 1, primary research, and 2, secondary research. In the primary research phase, we interviewed a variety of different people in various sectors of the AT industry, including professors, AT product retailers, and disability advocates. And in total, we conducted nearly 20 interviews that we included in our final research. And in the secondary research phase, we utilized different databases, for example, Google Scholar, to find reputable sources about the AT industry, including sources regarding AT supply chains, AT design courses at universities, and important organizations dedicated to providing access to assistive technologies. And in total, we consulted nearly 100+ sources during the research phase. Now I'll turn it over to the rest of our group so they can talk about our findings.
All right, so often we look to universities for novel research endeavors as well as new technology developments, and assistive technology is no exception. So currently there are over 24 university degree programs for rehabilitation engineering and assistive technology engineering, which are recognized by RESNA. This is also not including courses on college campuses that emphasize the principles of universal design. And in our research, we now have a new high-level understanding of the current work being done on college campuses. So our first finding is that we've discovered that labs are developing standards for the ISO, which is an international organization that ensures standardization to increase quality of assistive technology. We also found that universities are playing a significant role by creating orphan assistive technology, which are essentially devices that are extremely niche and not being addressed by the commercial market for that reason. And our third key finding is that student-run hackathons are not only educating students about universal design, but the event has resulted in AT devices for stakeholders in their communities. So we began our work by looking at labs, which have made significant progress in developing standards and tests for assistive technology. So for instance, the Human Engineering Research Laboratory at the University of Pittsburgh is funded by the US Department of Veterans Affairs and does extensive research on wheelchairs, among other AT. They're among the very few independent university labs in the nation that conduct tests for manufacturers in order to receive FDA approval. They also meet RESNA and ISO standards and can conduct tests to ensure that wheelchairs also meet those standards. And as you can see on the right is Dr. Cooper, who runs the lab, and he's testing out the MeBot, which can move over rugged terrain. And then on the left, they are simulating 3 to 5 years of wear and tear on a wheelchair to determine which materials work best. We also spoke with the head of the rear lab at Georgia Tech, and they conduct extensive research regarding tissue health and on involved with wheelchair use. So the rear lab helps test cushion designs to minimize pressure ulcers and tissue deformities as a result of sitting in a wheelchair for extensive periods of time. And the head of the lab told VOSAP directly that his work, the lab's work, can be found within ISO wheelchair cushion standards. And all of these findings are remarkable because they show that universities are setting standards for industry despite often having less funding available to them. We also looked into courses that teach students how to design assistive technology. So we spoke with professors at Stanford and MIT, and essentially their classes have teams of students each semester who pair up with a stakeholder, and they learn about the stakeholders' issues with a certain aspect of their life, and they try to design a device to enable them. So on the left is a vegetable cutter for an individual with grip impairments, and on the right, a group of students is helping their stakeholder, Abby, who lives in the Palo Alto area, and they designed a wheelchair so she can see in the dark. And the professors did tell us that although most of the students won't go into AT directly, the long-term impact is that the class redefines what it means to have a disability and to live with a disability. So one student from the Stanford course explained that the course helped them see the person first and the disability second. And another student found it extremely valuable to hear directly from a person living with a disability rather than a secondhand account through a textbook or through someone who might not live with a disability. And these classes prove that given the right AT, everyone can be enabled to live independently. We also looked into student-run hackathons and found that the AT hack at MIT was one of the largest. So over the course of the years, hundreds of students have participated in a weekend-long event to design a prototype for a stakeholder in their community. And 75% reported that they learned about user-centered design through the event. And actually in 2015, one of the teams who won the MIT hackathon went on to actually develop their technology, which is known as Puffin technology. So here's Adriana Malosi, who lives with cerebral palsy, and she went on to create a company that enables people to use puff and sip technology and to move that nozzle so they can interact with their devices. We also looked into advanced assistive technology degrees. So we focus on California State University Northridge, which offers a master's in assistive technology engineering and assistive technology sciences and human services. And the key thing about advanced degrees is that they result in more qualified disability coordinators on campuses, in HR offices, as well as engineers who can innovate AT. And We'd like to give a big thank you to Dr. Ramesh, who is the former Dean of Engineering and Computer Science at CSUN, for his insights and his work developing these critical programs, because they benefit students such as Nyla Morton, who we interviewed, who lives with a rare form of muscular dystrophy. And she explained to us that having very experienced AT coordinators who have extensive knowledge of AT devices helps to enable students and helps guide them through an already challenging time in their life in studying at a university. And finally, we just wanted to touch on the challenges that some university labs face. So it can be very difficult to secure enough funding for their lab. For example, the rear lab at Georgia Tech doesn't receive any funding from Georgia Tech. But a solution we found is the biomechatronics lab at MIT actually structures themselves within a larger media lab, which helps them secure greater funding. And our biggest goal with this research is we wanted to get out the word that universities are doing so much and they're so deserving of investment and time and money to continue innovating assistive technology.
So when we talk about assistive technology, we can generally separate it into two groups, conventional and emerging. The first group comprises technologies such as wheelchairs, spectacles, hearing aids, and electronic communication devices. The second group category of innovation takes advantage of enabling and evolutionary technologies. These include artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, brain-computer interfaces, and other powerful technological advances that have driven innovation over the last few years. Same type of division is done in a report by the United Nations World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO. It casts a fresh light on the shape and future direction of the assistive technology. It is based on a large-scale patent data analysis from 1998 to 2020, and it is the first ever comprehensive global inventory of assistive technology patents data. They have recently published their database, and it is available for independent research on their website. From the graph, we can see that patenting statistics show that conventional technology category patents are at around 9,000, highest in 2017, and for emerging assistive technologies, they are at 1,700, which is nearly 8 times bigger for conventional as compared to emerging technologies. But from the given information, we can also see that emerging assistive technologies are with a 17.17% average annual growth rate and are growing 3 times faster than their conventional counterpart with 6% average annual growth rate. What's more is that we cannot just overlook the relationship between conventional and emerging technologies. That's because they play a major role in the development of both the sectors. They have a symbiotic relationship. In Emerging technologies are making conventional assistive devices more connected, versatile, and inclusive. Apart from these observations, we can also see that in both the divisions, China is the leading innovator. For conventional, it has around 48,000 patents, and for emerging technologies, it has around 7,000 patents out of more than 130,000 patents identified. So the question is why? I mean, even in independent researchers, over one third are based in China and dominate simpler technologies. 40% of patents applicants in conventional assistive technology versus 18% in emerging. So why is China the leading innovative space in AT? I'll give you a hint. Necessity creates change. China is facing a severe aging population situation coupled with a decline in the number of children being born. So the development of the assistive technology industry is important to the government, and they are supporting the AT commercialization, R&D, funding, tax preferences, patent transformation, research institutions. And what's more is that recent activity in China's capital investment market also promotes many emerging assistive technological enterprise. To cope with its aging population, China has also introduced a series of policies that will greatly promote AT, remote IoT services, works or entertainment AT products, and other AT products. Now, if we talk about the most active domains over the period of the study, in the emerging assistive technology space, the most active domain over the period is hearing, followed by mobility, vision, and communication. However, since 2014, mobility has taken the lead among the emerging technology filings and is the fastest growing area for research, along with the environmental AT devices. This is the case in both conventional and emerging assistive technology. For conventional, average annual growth rate is 9% and 7% respectively in 2013-2017, and for emerging, it is 24% and 42% respectively in the same period. We find that big corporate players are leading the development of assistive technologies, 48% of conventional and 60% of emerging assistive technology. They are dominating in hearing, vision, and to some extent communication too. Universities and public research organizations are more prominent in emerging assistive technology dataset. For example, 23% of patent applications in emerging versus 11% in conventional. The increase in patent filings not only demonstrates that there is a clear need for IT innovation, but it also highlights the significant disparity that exists between the private and the public sector developments. The table by 80 scale shows the economic benefits. 80 scale has contributing partners like WHO, UNICEF, International Disability Alliance. So basically, the table shows the economic breakdowns or economic benefits of 80 axis. The total economic gains from meeting the unmet need of the four assistive technologies across the lower and middle income countries amount to over almost US $10 trillion in real terms over the next 55 years, which is almost equivalent to 1% of the LMIC gross domestic product over that period. And if we take an example, in the case of children, expanding the use of the four products among them in today lower middle income countries alone would generate around $4 trillion lifetime earning. I know the figures are a little bit dramatic, but they are backed by comprehensive research and data. Investment in the provision of four products, four assistive products, hearing aids, prostheses, eyeglasses, and wheelchairs will result in a return on investment of 9:1. This is a diagram showing the technology readiness level of assistive technologies. From this, we can identify that most of the emerging assistive technologies are in the development phase. 58% of the products have reached minimum viability, while 18% are commercialized. From the slide, we can see that the forecast for the exoskeleton market by 2027 is predicted to be at $5.7 billion with a compound annual growth rate of 4.3% during that period. While canes and crutches, the market has a 4.3% compound annual growth rate. In India, some of the innovative market players are Section Smart Cane, which is developed by IIT Delhi, manufactured by Phoenix Limited. These are also available under the ADIP scheme of the Indian government, and in private, they cost around rupees 3,000. Other than that, we have Sarthi Smart Cane, and for a more global perspective, we have VVOX Smart Cane, which costs around $599. Some of the recent innovations in AT industry are like smart gloves, which are created by researchers at the University of California and cost about $100. The Dot, which is a braille wristwatch, its display has 24 dots that move up and down to form four letters in braille, and it costs around $299. Then we have the first AI-powered hearing aid, self-driving cars from Apple, Google, and Tesla. We also have an AI bot known as Omnibot. It helps mobility and disability individuals to perform several day-to-day tasks. Its expected price in $21,000 with a pre-order discount of 30%. Then we all know about Elon Musk and Neuralink and its latest 2021 experiment of the monkey using a brain chip implant to play a game. But what we don't know is that there is a company called Synchron, which has received FDA permission for human testing its brain device ahead of Neuralink. So, I mean, finally, if we talk about change, if we take an example of India, let's consider India. India is a big country, right? And we need not to be overwhelmed while thinking about bringing change. As Will Smith said, start one step at a time and let the bigger picture form on its own. But for that, we need enforcement and awareness. As I said earlier, that necessity creates change, and I'm sure most of the people would agree here. If so, then a next step would be to question what creates necessity. Is it simply the need? I don't think so. Awareness is the key that creates necessity. With that, I'll hand over the torch to my colleague. Thank you very much for listening patiently.
Thank you. Assistive technology manufacturers, software developers, and dealers help bring assistive products to the marketplace. Many are small scale and reach small markets, especially in low and middle income countries. Our findings include the major global suppliers of various assistive technologies. Most of them are within North America, Europe, and East Asia, as these regions drive the global market. There are prominent suppliers in other regions, for example, India, Israel, and Australia, and there are many more types of assistive technology than we could cover. We spoke directly with 8 global suppliers in order to hear their perspectives of the industry. One of them is Raising the Floor, who provides Morphic, a software that makes it easier to use computers. Products in the aids for the blind and visually impaired global market include prescription lenses, reading softwares, and braille embossers. Smart vision assistants such as My Eye, which is developed by the Jerusalem-based company Orcam, are recent advancements. We spoke with ViewPlus Technologies, an American company, which is a leader in braille embossers and tactile graphics, and Certec, a supplier of products for the blind community in Portugal. Products in the mobility aids global market include manual and powered wheelchairs, motorized scooters, canes, walking aids, and more. A recent technological advancement in mobility aids is exoskeletons, such as the Canadian company Vitamia's walking assistant. We also spoke with ADAPS that's created a secure transfer sling for those in wheelchairs, and it's completely made in America. Products in the deaf aids global market include hearing aids, hearing implants, and accessories. Another market is telecommunications relay services, or TRS. TRS enables those who are deaf, deafblind, blind, hard of hearing, or have speech impairments to make phone calls. We spoke with the founder of VTC Secure, which offers video relay services for the deaf, and Translate Live, a tool that allows those who are deaf, blind, or speak different languages to communicate with one another. Augmentative and alternative communication aids, also known as AACs, are used by individuals who cannot rely on speech sometimes or all the time. We spoke with App2Speak, which provides an AAC mobile application. We also spoke with RJ Cooper, who makes accessories that make it easier for people with limited fine motor to access computers and tablets. These are the 8 suppliers who answered our many questions. Their founders' own disabilities or a strong desire for equity were the inspiration behind their assistive products, offering empowering solutions for specific environments and situations and needs. One question we asked was, what are their top challenges in putting products in the market? The most common response was finding ways to create awareness about the product, followed by finding funding or self-funding, ensuring the product meets users' needs and their support's needs, costs of safety testing, meeting regulatory requirements, and engaging with international dealers. We also asked these suppliers, what are their top challenges growing the company and expanding their market share? And the most common response was the demanding effort of marketing, followed by limited funds, tough competition, small market, small volume of sales, pandemic halting the business, and international sales demanding high shares to middlemen. One of the last questions we asked was what expectations these suppliers have for policymakers and insurance providers to boost their business, and the main response being that insurance and policy support an individual's ability to live and be productive, and provide access to assistive technology, whether financial or otherwise. They expect that policy and insurance providers learn that assistive technology plays a key role in a nation's productivity. And finally, that they enact stronger laws and enforce existing laws that ensure equitable access for individuals with disabilities. These were the main takeaways from our suppliers research.
Perfect. So now moving on to the NGO section. NGOs host various events and activities to ensure that people with disabilities have access to the resources and technology they need. And many of these organizations, for example, the Association on Higher Education and Disability, as well as the Rehabilitation Engineering and Assistive Technology Society of North America, have organized various webinars and conferences to spread awareness of AT and share the recent developments in the AT industry. Additionally, other organizations such as the Assistive Technology Industry Association or the ATIA have created research projects dedicated to better understanding the AT industry and the systemic barriers that both researchers as well as people with disabilities face. The ATIA has a research committee that focuses on helping bridge the gap between people, industry suppliers, consumers, and policies as well.
When it comes to policies regarding assistive technology, AT policy is a relatively new idea.
While a lot of policy has been developed over the last 40 years, such as the ADA or Americans with Disabilities Act, other pieces of policy are yet to come. So far, leaders in AT policy include but are not limited to the United States, United Kingdom, European Union, and United Nations. While I reviewed policy from the countries and international organizations listed below, I quickly wanted to mention a key piece of policy that I found to be very instrumental. First is the TAC Act. The importance of this policy and why it's so critical is that it was the first piece of legislation that defined AT devices and services in the United States. The definition it provided was any item, piece of equipment, or product system, whether acquired commercially off the shelf, modified, or customized, that is used to increase, maintain, or improve functional capabilities of individuals with disabilities. This policy would go on to be the backbone of many other important policies, such as the ADA, which went on to provide the basis of disability rights in the United States. Another policy I want to mention quickly is the law of the People's Republic of China on the protection of disabled persons. This was a policy implemented in China the same year as the ADA in 1990, and the policy was the first policy in Asia that helped finance and support the procurement of AT for its citizens. When it comes to international policy, a policy or strategy that I want to talk about is the Strategy of Rights for Persons with Disability from 2021 to 2030. It's a new strategy developed and adopted by the EU in March of 2021. Aims to create sustainable and universal development in the general disability field, but also in the field of AT. Aims to promote access to AT to all EU member states as well. The plan itself is built on two previous plans, the Disability Action Plan and the European Disability Strategy. The strategy hopes to continue to improve disability rights and improve on the previous strategies whose goals were to focus on removing ability-based discrimination, improving online accessibility, accessible construction, and removing barriers to equal participation in public life. Lastly, I wanted to talk about the UNCRPD, or United Nations Committee on Rights of Persons with Disability. The UNCRPD has released a lot of key metric data that I and my teammates have used in our research. In addition to this, they have very valuable position papers that have great opinions and ideas for the future of AT. Their goal is to promote, protect, and ensure the full and equal enjoyment of all human rights and fundamental freedoms by all persons with disabilities, and to promote the respect for their inherent dignity. Goals with AT including allowing people with disabilities the greatest independence by facilitating access to quality ATs, also including by making them available at an affordable cost. Also, to encourage assistive technology producers to take into account all aspects of mobility for persons with disabilities. Here's a quick timeline about a couple important AT-related policies in the US. While a lot of key policies have been implemented in recent years, there's a lot that still needs to be done in the form of programs and legislations. The World Health Organization currently states that only 1 in 10 people have access to the correct AT they need, and that currently approximately 1 billion people do not have access to correct AT. That number is set to grow to 2 billion by 2030. It's important that we find ways to create new methods that help increase access to AT and allocate money to support the R&D of new technologies. A couple key takeaways from the research I conducted include subsidizing funding for labs by providing more federal and local AT-based grants that would assist in developing new and meaningful AT. As many labs are currently very underfunded and have to find funding from difficult and obscure sources, it's also crucial that we educate people about the available programs to not only acquire R&D money, but also to provide information to end users to show them the different ways they can procure and finance AT. It's also important for students, specifically engineering students, to gain exposure to the importance of AT and universal design. As my teammate Katie mentioned earlier, there's only 24 universities in the US that have AT-related degree programs, one of them being Professor Ramesh's master's degree program at California State University, Northridge. On the commercial side of things, many AT-focused startups have difficulty acquiring funding due to the preconceived notion that AT companies are not scalable. By using the practice of the universal design language, we can help to change that image by designing products that are accessible to a wider market of individuals. But it's also important to demonstrate that to investors such as venture capital, angel investors, and private equity that the AT sector has the potential for great returns. As Syed mentioned earlier, there's a lot that we can do to increase the value of the AT market. One thing we can do is we can develop economic models that show the value of investing in AT companies, the ability to provide AT into the workplace, and boost the total factor productivity that it costs us.
So accessing the proper AT yields very numerous economic, educational, and health benefits for people with disabilities. In terms of economic benefits, having proper AT would allow nearly 10.7 million people to enter the workforce. And in terms of educational benefits, students will gain valuable skills by being able to do assignments and homework by themselves. And in terms of health benefits, accessing the correct AT reduces the overall risk for various health complications that may arise. So overall, AT provides so many benefits for people with disabilities as it helps them feel independent. There's also so many different in-depth steps that we can take to expand the scope and depth of this research project, including looking more into the feasibility and the cost of different timelines of policy recommendations, looking more into interviews with industry experts, getting more in-depth research with various AT fields, and we hope to continue expanding this research in years to come. Overall, assistive technology is very important to our society as it has allowed brilliant, influential individuals to make their mark on the world, like Stephen Hawking and Michael J. Fox. We aim to provide significant contributions to the AT industry and policymakers through this research. By highlighting key areas of need for users of AT, as well as the gaps of our current policy, we hope that such important findings will be used to address the needs of the disability community. And with that, we thank you for attending our presentation.
We at Voice of SAP, as you know, we are promoting assistive technology in multiple ways. So we are going to have a virtual exhibition to connect global community of innovators. And that's where virtual exhibition that we are going to have would probably be a platform that will give a lot of opportunities to connect the innovators with the people like you in the industry and funding and venture capitalists and all of that. So we will look for your guidance, sir.
I love that idea. In fact, it just crossed my mind. What we haven't seen at one of our major events in our field, Closing the Gap or ATIA, is a booth or a space for innovators just like that are up and coming, and they're small, or they might be an individual with a great idea. And that would be a wonderful booth or space area at one of these two events.
We need to factor in how can we help the poorer when they have certain special needs not be further excluded. And so how do we make those technologies accessible to them, financially accessible? That's one question. And then maybe the second question, just so I don't speak for too long, even though I have many more, were also, I'm actually quite curious about beyond, hearing, mobility, and vision and communication. I'm actually quite curious about intellectual and emotional needs, and if you've seen any supporting devices or artificial intelligence that sort of help with issues related to speech or speech impediments or certain intellectual disabilities or even emotional. We know that there are certain AIs that sort of catch cues and try to interpret them and then aid. So I'm just curious, have you seen such things? I don't have much knowledge on that. Thank you. I'll stop here.
No,
Go
ahead, sir.
Thank you, sir. So, with the last question, definitely we have seen such devices. For example, in India itself, we have a company called Avaz, and they have developed a speech engine which is for communication aid. So, and this is not the only example. We have around more than 30 plus examples of such things in our database that we have used while searching. And apart from that, and definitely I agree with you, sir, one of the challenges can be also be the lack of legal or regular framework to support the adoption of these products. And this is likely to become most acute when the boundary between the medical and consumer devices starts to dissolve.
Conceptually, assistive technology is defined in the United States in the Tech Act, and also it's built into the education system as not just a device, but also a service. So I'm wondering where that service piece is. And again, it doesn't have to be an official service, a sort of paid professional. It could be anybody, but who's making that connection for a person with a disability who's not aware that there's something that can help them, and somebody who stays up with the emerging trends that you're talking about, who stays up with what's available, but also knows how to connect what's available to specific reasons for needing it. So just it's sort of a comment and also sort of a question.
Yeah, so when it comes to services,
I think with IDEA, the IDEA Act, there's something called the IEP, or Individualized Education Program. That's something for students who have educational disabilities, and they can work with their IEP coordinator to develop a plan for them that helps them get through school and get the necessary assistive technology. They can get through school, but the benefit of the IEP is that it also helps them transition into the workplace, and into the workforce, and those such services are available for students in order to get the necessary assistance that they need from other individuals to be the most empowered and independent that they can be.
Yeah, I think we're going to wrap up now. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I know many of you have been to multiple of these presentations, so thank you for participating, giving comments, questions, and supporting our research teams.